So welcome to Stump the Monk once again. Today we're going to talk with my friend Phoenix Smith, who's an ecotherapist, an Orisha priest, and an all-around amazing person. We're going to talk a bit about the practice of and understanding this indigenous West African religion and the way it moves through the diaspora into the present-day world.
How do we find out what kinds of relationships work for us?
I think that it's really important for us to spend time with and understand the nature of our desire. What's it like for me to desire things, right? So when I'm desiring intimacy or when I'm desiring connection versus when I'm horny and want to have sex. And how are those different and how do they relate to each other? And I think that so as we start to examine our experiences of the world, we start to see things, at least for me, it was always an experience of what doesn't work more than, oh yeah, that's how it needs to be. Like I would try things out and be curious, and I would realize like, oh yeah, that's not going to work for me. And and that's a painful process sometimes, especially when you're dealing with other people. But I think it's really how we come to understand more about our place. And the more that we understand our place in the world, the more we sort of can take our place, the more we can keep in our own embodied experience, the more we get to have the kinds of relationships we want to have. Whether it's intimate partners, but also friendships and other kinds of relationships.
What can we do about anger?
So anger is a really interesting thing. I think that particularly within spiritual life, it sort of gets a bad rap a little bit. And we think that if we're spiritual or if we're practicing deeply enough, we won't have the experience of anger or we won't be enraged. But I think that that's not true. And I think that part of spiritual experience is to connect to what it is to be a person, right? And so, and people have the experience of anger and people have the experience of rage. And, I'm of the opinion that there's some things happening in the world right now that if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. And so I think the real trick is to not be dragged around by it, to not let our anger decide our choices or our behaviors, but to really allow the anger to inform us, to move us, to recognize, oh, wait, I'm angry, which means I need to do something, but I can slow down enough to maybe pay attention to what's the appropriate response. So I think that we have to be really careful of trying to ignore or push aside or cut off the experience of anger and really instead turn towards it and try to understand it. What's it like for me in my body to be angry? What's the physical experience of it? But also what's it like for me emotional? Like how do I experience anger? What's it like to be me angry? Not what are my opinions about it, not what are the stories about it, not the particularities even of what it's like to be, what it is I'm mad at or whatever, right? Like it's not about the particularities, it's about more of a, what's it like for me to be angry? And then from there you can look at, well, and what's the request? What does it want me to do? What is it asking for? What is it that it needs? Can I give it the space to tell me what it needs? Can I give it the space and opportunity to express itself in a healthy way or in a way that's appropriate or that can bring about healing and change?
What do you see as the future of this podcast?
I'm really hoping that we can. I think that we're having conversations that really need to happen, and we're especially because what I hope we're doing is bringing some complexity to the sort of mundane experience of the world, right? But also to have more conversations about what is it to be healing, and how do we create healing communities with each other? How do we understand each other? How do we connect with each other? And so we have some really amazing guests coming up, and we have some really amazing opportunities coming up. And today we did our first ever over the internet video chat, which depending on how it works means that we can talk to people all over the world, which then it opens up our conversations and our opportunities for talk, and I think that so that's what I hope for our show, and that we just keep trying to provide really interesting conversations that help people find healing in their own experience and help people connect to their own lived experience. So I want to welcome my friend Phoenix Smith, who is an Orisha priest, as well as an ecotherapist, and the director of HIV prevention services at Alameda County, which is Oakland, California. And I'm really grateful you're joining me, and I'm glad we got the Zoom thing working. And so let's start off with, maybe tell us, what is Orisha practice? So what does it look like? One, how to get maybe some background, but also what's your practice look like in your daily life?
Okay, so it's not so much, I call it a practice because I practice it, but it's a religion. Mm-hmm. And so Orisha religion is rooted in West Africa and the Yoruba people from Nigeria and parts of Benin and West Africa, and ancestors that were brought over to the diaspora, the United States, Cuba, Brazil, and the Caribbean, who were enslaved, were able to maintain their religious practices and traditions and brought it with them here into the diaspora. And in the diaspora, it took different forms, but it still has the same roots. So the form or roots that I practice is Lukumi, which is the Afro-Cuban roots. Mm. So my spiritual elders and my spiritual lineage is rooted out of Cuba, Matanzas, Cuba. There are people that are initiated and practice the religion from Brazil, which is called Candomblé, and there are Orisha and Candomblé, and then there are people that practice a more African traditional path called Isese or Ifa. So you might hear it called Lukumi, you might hear it called Candomblé, you might hear it called Isese or Ifa, you might hear it called Santeria. But I call it Lukumi, and I was initiated into this tradition 11 years ago, and it's a religious tradition that's an oral-based tradition. The foundation is ancestral reverence. The Orisha are deities of nature, and that each of us that is initiated, we have at least one main Orisha that guides our lives. And so we're called priests of that particular Orisha. And so my Orisha is Daigan, which is the Orisha of the volcano.
Oh, wow.
And very much masculine oriented, fiery warrior. Mm-hmm. But the other Orisha that is very important to me and guides my life, all of them guide my life, but the other one that manifests very strongly in my life is Oshun, who's the Orisha of the river and relationships and love and healing, among other things.
Wow. Yeah. So, I think what's also really interesting is, like you said, it's carried on through the diaspora via enslaved people. And how do you think that experience sort of, do you think the religion in some ways helped people survive that enslavement and sort of make it through, including the Jim Crow South and all of the things that happened since the enslavement? Mm-hmm. Do you also do you think that helped people survive? But then also, how do you think it changed in that process? Like, do you think that the practices are different, say, that you practice here than if you went to West Africa and met other priests with the same Orisha? Would it be different? So
I was thinking about what is a good sentence or whatever that can kind of describe the impacts of my practice and my initiation in my life. And a few weeks ago, there was a symposium at the Star King School of Ministry, mm-hmm. and there was this woman, Dr. Rachel Harding, who is I believe she's a professor of religion. And anyway, she says something, and I wrote it down, that I think is a very clear way to kind of explain. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question around survival. So she says, indigenous African religious practice in the diaspora for Black people. You have to understand, it's not just Black people that practice this religion, people from all races. My main spiritual teacher is a white man, for example. Mm-hmm. But that indigenous African religious practice in the diaspora for Black people is a means by which we remember and cultivate an alternative understanding of ourselves in the face of intergenerational traumas and assaults and centuries of denial by the structures of white supremacy.
Awesome. Yeah.
And so for me, that really kind of encapsulate what my ancestors had to do in order so that I could be here right now talking to you in this technology and Zoom about mm-hmm. the Orisha, is that it created a framework, it created a way of life, it created a way of knowing that we could remember who we are, separate mm-hmm. from white supremacy, separate from slavery, separate from capitalism, all those things, so that not only could we survive, but we could thrive. So
right.
Have, our children, our grandchildren, me, be able to still be here and practice the religion, and mm-hmm. give us an alternative way of knowing ourselves and understanding our trauma, intergenerational trauma, and how the separation from our ancestral lineage and practices and cultural practices, how it created a deep wounding. And for me, this is the main thing that has helped me to survive my own family interpersonal drama, but not survive it, but thrive and create this whole new but old identity for myself, mm-hmm. sense of agency in my life, where I have a sense of agency and empowerment in serving my community, where I'm able to have health and peace, and I wouldn't have anything I have today without the sacrifices that were made before me, but without all of the work that I do mm-hmm. With this practice. And it helps me to know who I am beyond what white supremacy or Western society says that I am.
Right. Well, and for me, I think what's really great about spiritual practices and sort of when we look at them is that they offer this opportunity to heal inside of our oppressions, so that because the oppression's not ever, my friend Lama Rod once said, the oppression doesn't ever go away. Right. So we have to, if I waited for the healing until I was out of the oppressions, I would never be healed.
Exactly. That's it, yeah.
And so for me, what I think is really great about what you're saying and what I'm hearing is that there's this opportunity to heal despite white supremacy, despite patriarchy, despite capitalism, or not despite it, but in the midst of it, because we're sort of lifting up what's great in our lives and focusing on our own healing rather than responding all the time to every instance of remaking oppression, right?
Exactly. And it's for me, one of the things I have to say is that it's work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A word that is frequently used in the religion that I practice is work. Have you done the work? Are you doing the work? So, I mean, it's physical labor. When we talk about embodiment, it's physical labor. It's psychic labor. It's psychological labor. Like I actively do ritual every day, right? So that consists for me of I sing to my ancestors, and there's certain songs that you sing, and there's a certain order that you sing them in. I give them offerings every day. It's work.
Yeah. Right.
And then there are times where I have to do larger ceremonies that, for example, I had to do something for myself last Saturday. It takes me all day.
Right.
9 in the morning to 5 in the afternoon, and then I'm wiped out afterwards. I'm like resting. It's physical labor in that in our ceremonies where there's dance, where the spirits possess us. We believe that spirits possess our body and inhabit our body. But there's also spiritual labor where we are on our knees praying, or we're using, we use animals as sacrifice in our traditions, and we're sacrificing and lifting things and carrying things and cleaning things. You have to be in shape because you're bending and pulling and lift. It's physical.
Right.
Labor.
Right.
It is not sitting in a church in a pew, or just sitting. It's active physical labor.
Right.
So it really, for my personality, it fits my personality because I have a very intense energy and personality. I mean, my Orisha is a volcano. So being able to use my body and work that way is a way that I'm able to channel all of my energy in a healthy way to a higher purpose.
Right. Well, and you mentioned that the Orishas possess your bodies. So in some ways, you sort of embody the being of the divine, and I think it also helps us, though, when we're in those experiences, like Buddhist meditation, or when I do a well-being ceremony every morning, or when I do my prostrations. There's a way in which that practice brings me in relationship to my body that is different than that helps me relate to it in a different kind of way, right? So it brings me into this present moment and in touch with that part of my life that is beyond all of the trappings, right?
Right.
So, and I think that's what's partially great about so many religious practices, and I think it goes to your training as an ecotherapist and how it is that you do therapy in the woods and in relationship to a natural experience that is, I think, really an interesting thing as well, right? Like, so we're using our bodies, we're bringing our bodies and our consciousness to our bodies in such a way that we get to take our place more genuinely, right? Like we get to be ourselves more. Right. Does that sort of make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, and I came to ecotherapy via my spiritual practice. So the Orisha all correspond to a particular force in nature. My Orisha is the volcano, Oshun is the river, Yemaya is the ocean, Obatala is the mountain, Ogun is the forest, Osign is the Orisha of the herbs and the plants, Oya is the tornado and the guardian of the ancestors. Ochosi is the deer and the hunter in the forest. So for me, I did not have a relationship I did not have a positive or a deep connection to the environment before I started practicing this tradition.
Mm-hmm.
I would go outside, but I wouldn't say I had an ecological consciousness. It
Mm-hmm.
was through my relationship with the Orisha, because through the religion, I have a way to name, a way of knowing um, to name aspects of nature. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just a river, or, we're both from Texas. It's not just the Rio Grande or whatever, or the Gulf of Mexico, right?
Right.
The river is Oshun. And so
Right.
Oshun is like my spiritual mother in Orisha. And
Mm-hmm.
so Oshun represents my emotional healing. She represents love. She represents community. Um, she represents beauty and
Mm-hmm.
joy. So it gave me an entryway of being able to connect with the natural world in a very
Right.
personal way that I didn't have prior to practicing this religion.
Right. And I think that that personal relationship then also changes how you relate to your own experience, right, of the world.
Right,
And so even when you're outside of nature, I think when we change the way we relate to the world, we change the way we are in the world.
right, right. And one of the things that a principle that's very important in indigenous African religion of the Orisha, whether you're coming from Brazil or Cuba or Nigeria, is a concept called Iwa Puele,
Mm-hmm.
which roughly translates as a cool, having a cool head, having good character, and
Mm-hmm.
that all. I mean, that's the purpose of our being initiated and practicing, is to develop a cool head, because we believe that the head is where our spirit resides, is in our head.
Oh, interesting.
Initiation ceremony, they do things to your whole body, but especially your head. And so having a cool head and a cool temper, having equanimity, is very, very important in the tradition.
And also, I think, you and I both live a life of service, right?
Right.
And so when we live a life of service, it's hard for our partners to sort of feel served as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And especially when things like community or our practice, or there are things that come before my relationship, and that makes it difficult. But that's because of the fact that I got picked, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is the way my practice took me, and now I'm this person. And so, I think it's a common problem for all of us who find ourselves in these places of service,
Mm-hmm.
in these places of deep commitments to something bigger than ourselves.
Right. And as you said, like, my practice to my devotion to the Orisha comes first.
Right.
It comes before my family. It comes before any woman that I'm dating or partner. That's my number one priority. And so it might mean, like, some days something may come up and I can't do something. For
Mm-hmm.
example, last Saturday I had to do a big ceremony that was not planned. So everything else had to be put on hold.
Right.
And I had to spend my time and my day doing that. It means that there are some things that I can't have around me. Like, I don't do drugs, and I can't have them around me.
Right.
It means that I can only be in certain kind of relationships. It means for me, I can be in only one relationship at a time. I can't be in multiple relationships, right?
Right.
Like some Orisha people, they can, but me, my path, no.
Right.
I have taboos that I
Right.
have to follow. And so,
I think it's also part of our wiring too. Like,
right.
as a gay man who came out in the 70s and sort of went through all these experiences, and for a long time thought that gay men express sexuality in a particular kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I realized that I didn't have to that's true for some gay men, and that's true for some people. That's just not the way it works for me. You know what I mean? And so, and that's okay. Like, that's, again, is taking our place and realizing, like, oh, this is me.
Right.
And yeah, that may be true for you, you know. Good, great, go, you go do you, and I'm glad you figured it out. And this is me. And being it, that's really hard sometimes, I think, because you want to be, especially because you also get pushback, right? Like, you get certain things thrust. Oh, you're just so conservative, or oh yeah, that's. Yes. And for me, it's not even a religious restriction. It's more like, that's just not how I'm wired.
Right. And for me, it's like, what brings me the most peace? I've had many years in my life, more years in my life of not having peace than peace.
Right.
So now I know what peace feels like, and I want that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I grew up in a dysfunctional family, and all the things that I've had to deal with being who I am. I know what it feels to be in a place of not having peace. And so peace is what I seek, and peace is what I love.
Right, yeah.
But what happens too is, because I'm in these positions and roles, is that, you know, people who may need a certain type of healing, or women, they are attracted to me. And I've had to work through that as well, right?
Right.
So that I don't, take on every person who I want to have an intimate connection to as my project. Like, finding that reciprocity and that equality, because of my role and the way that I am, I attract, and I have chosen those people that have particular kinds of wounds or traumas that, not that I didn't learn from them, but I wasn't able to get what I needed.
Right. Well, and I think it's not just intimate relationships that we do that with.
Right.
Like, I see it in my friendships.
Yes.
I see it in the ways that I connect to people sometimes. And I realize, like, oh, wait, I'm not here as a friend. I'm here as your chaplain, or I'm here as, I'm here for a purpose, and that I get it. And sometimes I go, shit, really? Again?
Right. I know, me too. It's like, okay, you can call me or email, you really want to hang out? And I'm like, okay. And I hang out, and I'm like you, I'm like, wait a minute. This is, some transactional thing. They're really looking for some spiritual counseling or consultation. And, I tell people, look, if it goes in that direction, we cannot be friends. Like,
right? Yeah.
It's not like we're friendly, but we're not going to be friends like someone that I hang out with, because my role to you has shifted and changed.
Right.
And I try to be very good with my boundaries, in that way, in my role. And so, but yeah, like, it happens. And you're like, oh my God, I thought we were just going to kick it and have tea.
So let's go back to this connecting with the world and the ways that we as leaders and because I also think, your job as a therapist, as a, someone who provides therapy, and how do you, for me, it's really funny, because what I find is that I'll be in the middle of a conversation and realize, oh shit, this person is wanting me to be their chaplain. And that's where my training is. Yeah,
well, for me, so my work in ecotherapy is I do more teaching than one-on-one ecotherapy with people. That's, I teach other people, I teach other therapists, other people how to integrate ecotherapy into their practice. I write about it. But, however, what I do receive a lot is emails from a lot of people who want ecotherapy from me, and many young people of color, queer people of color lately have been emailing me. They want to know how to do ecotherapy, but then they also want kind of counseling in that way. And so I've had to learn over the years, I have to be very discerning around the kinds of questions that I ask. And so that, because people aren't always clear that that's what they want.
Right.
right? And then I get into a conversation and I see that that's happening. And I've gotten better over the years. It took me a while to figure it out, but I say no more than I say yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, I have a lot going on. I have this big job in public health where I'm giving and I'm working with traumatized communities,
Right.
With a lot of trauma in Oakland, right? And the politics of being in county government is traumatizing in and of itself.
Right.
I'm an Orisha priest. I'm part of a collective where I sometimes participate in a healing collective. Clients come into me and I have this ecotherapy work. So my self-care is very important to me, and I've had to learn how to be more discerning around my
Mm-hmm.
time and how I, let people in and what I offer. So, that is something that has been a struggle, but that I've had to work through. But another thing is in Orisha religious practices, we charge money for our services. We have no
Mm-hmm.
shame in charging money. It's very clear. And we use the term derecho, which means offering a fee. So when people want to come to me for consultation, there's a fee that they pay.
Right.
And it's cash, right? And so it's not, I don't I don't do trades. The
Mm-hmm.
only time where I offer my services for, just by donation is when I participate in the Healing Clinic Collective. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I participate in that, so that people who might want a divination or Orisha consultation and can't afford it, they can come see me there. And then they bring whatever they have. If it's 2 pennies, they put it on the mat, whatever.
Right.
There has to be some offering, some reciprocity. They have to
Right.
bring something. Um, I think there's somebody at the door now. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Sorry.
There's somebody at her door. Okay, so I know that you need to go, and I want to thank you for your time and your energy. And I want to just say how much I really appreciate that our paths crossed at that healing thing for Pulse. And every time that I see or witness anything that you're doing, I'm always sort of inspired and appreciate it. And so I just want to say thank you for being you in the world, and also for taking the time to spend with me this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much. And I still want to get to San Francisco so we can just hang out.
Absolutely. Good luck on your mold testing. I hope it clears up whatever's going on for you.
I hope so too. So we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey there, everybody. This is Fred, the producer, cinematographer, and editor of the show. I hope you enjoyed this month's podcast. If so, we would really appreciate you sharing it and telling your friends about us, especially since we are in very uncertain times at the moment. We are still trying to figure everything out and what this all means for the future of our guests and the way we create the show. But just know we are working on it. We are trying to figure it out. But we hope that this can somehow impact and improve your time in quarantine, or just ease your anxiety of the things going on in the world. But just know that we will all get through this. Be safe, be healthy, and stay positive.